So without further ado, let's bring to the stage executive producer and head of Media Res, Michael Ellenberg. He stars as Yanko Flores, Nestor Carbonell. She stars as Amanda Robertson, Tig Notaro. Please welcome Mark Duplass, who stars as Chip Black. She stars as Mia Jordan, Karen Pittman. Our next panelist is executive producer Mimi Leader. Nicole Bahari stars as Chris Hunter. Please welcome showrunner, executive producer, writer Charlotte Stout. She stars as Alex Levy and serves as executive producer, Jennifer Aniston. I think I think they've heard of you. And executive producer also, Reese Witherspoon, who stars as Bradley Jackson. Wow, I'm really actually a fan of the show. We're going to talk about a wide range of stuff, but first we're going to see some clips from this last season. Not the new season. I would have liked to see clips from the new season, but with each cast member shown doing different things. And so let's start with the first one called Fix It. Let's talk about this scene because fix it or I will. It's quite dramatic, but you've done something bad. You've done something real bad.
I did something very bad.
Yeah. Talk about that scene a little bit.
Gosh, okay.
Remember Journey Back.
Okay, Journey Back. Yeah, well, what I'll say is that it was a really incredible journey to go on as Bradley Jackson this year with all of the January 6th.
Right.
We had the big, am I giving it away?
No, this aired.
They know? Okay, great.
Did it? Reese,
it aired.
Wait, y'all saw it?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's streaming.
Yeah, streaming.
Binge watching.
Got it. Okay, so yeah, right. So we did the insurrection thing, and then and then I had this sort of secret to play from the very beginning to the very end, and it was just so fascinating as an actor to get to play that level. And also, kind of this is the first time for Corey and Bradley where Corey is asserting himself in this way that's it's this big moment of friction between us for the first time where she doesn't kind of have him in the palm of her hand anymore.
Right.
And it really, the dynamics shift.
Can I ask you, doing that journey as a journalist, that's like the biggest no-no of all time.
Yeah, I know, yeah. I mean, I feel bad, like I really did it, but I didn't do anything.
Right.
But, but I'm like getting sweaty.
Yeah.
I know I shouldn't have, Kara, I know.
No, I'd fire you.
I know you should, and I probably would never work again, right?
Never. We're going to talk about that.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
But
You're rehired.
you started
I don't know.
off. You started off as kind of this like person that was going to break things, disrupt things, and do things differently.
And then, but what a fascinating thing, and it's actually a great dinner party conversation, which is, would you do something illegal for your brother, your sister, your mother, your father? Like, would you go to jail for them?
Mm-hmm.
Would you?
No.
No.
If my brother was a January 6th, to the jail he goes.
Are you serious?
Look, you do it. You would do it.
Yeah, I don't know. I I would go to jail for.
There's actually a lot of stories of that. There was a big story about that in happening.
I mean, I think it happens every day.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, that people cover up stuff that their family does. I mean, it just depends on how much you like your brother.
Right, right.
I really like my brother, so he's cool.
My brother wouldn't do it, but if they did, yes, I would. Yeah.
Oh, he wouldn't have been a January 6th?
No.
Yours wouldn't either. You're good.
No, mine wouldn't. Mine wasn't there.
No.
We're going to get back to it, and also, and a number of other things you're doing. The lesbian thing, I have some interest in.
Yeah, tell
We'll
me.
get to it.
Tell me, what did you think? What did you think?
I have some notes.
This is so exciting.
You did a great job. You did an excellent
right.
job. We were all thrilled.
We'll
And
talk backstage.
As a group, we met and we enjoyed it very much. More.
At the
would be
meeting?
what- Yeah, we
Y'all
had the
talked
meeting.
about it at the
Yeah, we
meeting?
meeting.
Okay,
Yeah, exactly.
Did you talk about it at the meeting, y'all?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
we did. All right, let's get to the next clip called Board Meeting.
We're gonna need to talk about that scene.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, let's talk about that scene. So it's one of my favorite, what you did to this guy who is basically Elon Musk, and I know him well, so it's fantastic. We were also thrilled, even more so than her being a lesbian, was you, one, that you canoodle with Elon Musk, and then you really screw him over, which is great, which I think is great. So let's
Let's
talk.
stop saying Elon Musk, though.
Okay, all right, but it is.
Okay. Ish. Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
sure. Okay, fine.
Such a hard name to
Hard
hear.
to say. Okay, it's a hard name to know him too.
I
just
can
so
only
you know.
imagine.
Yeah, it's been a long journey. So let's talk a little bit about that arc of doing that.
Yeah,
and
that's
bringing that character in because tech has taken over a lot of media. There's been a lot of activity and stuff like that. Sure. How did you look at that arc in the character? Because you wanted to become an entrepreneur. You really did. You wanted to take over and control the media that had been controlling you for so long.
Right, and I think it's, you know, as we all say sometimes, be careful what you wish for. And of course, this man comes in, this billionaire tech guy comes in, and you know, the future of the network is sort of threatened desperately, and then he comes in, and of course, I want to question him, as we all do. No one quite understands what the heck is going on, and so, then of course, you know, natural human instincts take over, and there was a connection, and unfortunately, what? And so yeah, and then of course the charming, wonderful side of Elon Musk comes out, and you know, that you sort of get swept away, and unfortunately, that I wasn't listening to taking the cues because as being a human being, my partner in crime tries to tell me what's going on, and thankfully there is a part of my brain that is still intact.
That's a journalist, actually.
That's the journalist. The integrity is still there, so we just have to lay out a couple breadcrumbs to see. Let's see if this is actually true. Heartbreakingly so, yes. So thinking on your toes is what had to happen pretty quickly, and then turn that shit around.
Yeah. So when you're doing that, when you brought in sort of a tech leader, who is a villain, really, who ultimately is a villain, it was very prescient, like what happened, because right now today you see all the various, Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post, Elon owns X, Lorraine Powell Jobs owns Atlantic and things like that. It's a real movement of what's happening within the industry right now.
Taking it down too, you know, it's sort of the integrity of journalism isn't what it used to be. You know, the networks, depending on what network you're listening to, what news, you know, outlet you're listening to, you're getting a completely different narrative.
Right.
And it's dividing our country, and it's heartbreaking, in fact. So that's sort of, with all of these big tech companies taking over individual sort of networks and shows, that's what's, I think, happening.
You know, it's interesting because I've just written a book about it called Burn Book, and one of the things I keep saying to people was, do you remember the Twilight Zone episode, To Serve Man? It's a cookbook. With these tech companies, it's a cookbook. They want to eat us, and which is something I've been trying to explain for a long time. But you guys did an amazing job explaining exactly what the goal is.
Yeah.
It's a cookbook. Trust, and it's still, I will get to that. It's a cookbook. All right, we're going to play another clip. It's a scene with Nicole. Why are you making a face like that?
Just, looking at yourself is not
hard.
a thing. It's
Oh,
weird.
okay. Let me just say, I've interviewed thousands of people. I wish I did an interview like that. And I've made Mark Zuckerberg sweat. I had fights with all these people. Talk about that, preparing that, because that was a fantastic interview.
Well, I think it was the writing. Charlotte and Joshua Allen really kind of like served it to us. And then I got to work with the most brilliant actress, Holland Taylor. I think it comes alive when you're really exchanging and engaging with someone. And if it weren't for, I feel like that, I don't think people would have connected to it in the same way.
Yeah.
The preparation is just, the same actor preparation stuff. But we had like a really weird day.
Okay.
It was like, I think Thomas, our director for that episode, got COVID. So he was directing us outside from the trailer in the parking lot. In a van in the parking lot. So we were sort of like waiting in between, hearing from like a walkie-talkie, like a few directions here and there, if everything was breaking up. And so like Holland and I just kept looking at each other and like, we're just gonna get through it. Yeah.
How did you build the tension between you? Because it did feel like a real interview, and that's very hard. I've seen a lot of people do interviews on TV shows, and it's not, it's like doctors on medical shows. That's not how it goes. But that was the first time I was like, that's how it goes when it works.
I don't know. I think we were just listening. I think we were just, she's so brilliant. And so we just kind of played off of one another.
Yeah.
If you see, like, some of her reactions are just like,
no, she's embarrassed for herself, and yet still keeps going.
And I still have to keep going.
Right.
It's a gift.
It's a fantastic.
It's the writing. It's just like, and it's a gift to be here. So I'm excited.
So, one of the things that your character does a lot is she becomes increasingly forthright on the show about these issues, which a lot of shows don't go to. Can you talk about that? Like, especially in this interview, this is a big risk this character takes as a character.
Yeah, revealing her actual political stance is sort of a big deal. But I don't know, Chris is sort of coming into her own, and she just feels like the platform is more than what she intended initially, which was just like being a fun
she's a pleaser to
person on being like a journalist coming from the athletic world on this show. She felt like her responsibility initially was just to bring the light, and now she had this other weight to carry. And it's sort of like a choice that I think a lot of us have right now when you're in the public eye.
Great. Yeah. Okay, so let's do the next one. We're going to get to Charlotte and you, Mimi, in just a second, but first this is one for Karen.
That's with my favorite scene partner over there. That was wonderful.
That's the best whatever. What? One of the things I like about this character is this person's like an onion. You pull different things out of the character. Talk a little bit about that, the development of this character.
Yeah, if you could answer in Russian, please.
Okay, right.
By the way, let me just add, your Russian is excellent.
Oh,
I spent a lot of time in Russia.
Yeah, Ronit, who is our script supervisor, she speaks Hebrew, but she also speaks a little Russian. And she came up to me between takes and said, "Do you speak Russian?" Yeah, that is high praise. You said you wanted to know about what?
How did you? First, I actually want to know how you spoke Russian so well. All I know is devishka, which I say to everyone when I was in Russia, which means beautiful little one, I think. How did you learn that so well? Because it really is quite good.
Well, Michael gave me a Russian coach. They gave us a Russian coach, Anna Suskatnaya, and just hours on the phone with Anna. And as an actor, what you love is when the writers throw you a horseshoe or a pebble, in the pond of your character, as it were. You love when they just give you something to chew on, and it was just. I had known Mia for 2 seasons, and when Charlotte
came. I think this was came out of the writers' room. They said, Mia speaks Russian. I was like, of course she does. Yes. And so hours just studying sounds and words and how to say it, so that what you want is to create a seamless connection between the writer's soul and the character, right? So that quite naturally the words come out as if Mia is there and she's speaking Russian. So the goal for me was just to sound like she really did have that and pull it out of her pocket and got the job done.
One of the parts that's important is that character is very guarded for much of the first season, and then you suddenly start to see onion pieces of
Right. I think that was. I think that Charlotte wanted that to happen. I think we wanted to pull back some of the layers of who Mia was. I wanted to happen. I think we all wanted to see more of Mia's emotional landscape. Why does she care so much? Why does she do the things that she does? And what's going on at home? And it's thrilling for me as an actor to be able to show different sides of a character.
There's a person like that in every newsroom, by the way, who's you don't know a lot about, and suddenly
you do. Yeah, I actually think the journalists are some of the most fascinating people. They bring the truth, facts, information to everyone, and there's an integrity to it. There's a character behind it, and I'm fascinated by why would you choose to do this thing, especially in a year like we're having, where we're going to vote on a president, in a political year. Free press matters so much, even more this year than any other year. And so I'm excited to see what season 4 is going to be.
Well, we'll talk about that.
We'll talk about that, yes.
The reason why you want to do it is because enough is one of your favorite words. That's enough. Or no is what journalists want to do when they see things that aren't true. I mean, lies really get to them very deeply as people, I think. All right, next one. Let's go.
Lies get to journalists?
Lies get to journalists. I hate lies.
Yeah.
I hate lies.
Yeah.
I hate them, which is interesting. And I think it
I would imagine.
Yes.
I mean, depending on the journalist.
yeah, because what happens, it's fair. Yeah, we're not going to get into Geraldo Rivera, but it's true. You do. You have a kind of life where you have hello, he lied. Essentially, kind of stuff.
We're all soaking that
The
in,
next
by
book
way,
title.
Kara.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Okay, good. Next clip.
Wow.
Number 1, there's not that much sex in journalism, but that's okay. It's great here. Such a doormat that you are. But I've had that discussion. So talk a little about that character, because that sort of enabler of a well-known talent is a really very common thing in journalism. The producers behind.
Yeah,
you see it a lot.
It's very interesting to me. I'm very different than Chip in that way. I'm a people pleaser, and if I don't get the love, I'm out of there pretty quickly, because I'm desperate in a different way than Chip is. But I think what I love about the Chip and Alex relationship so much is that I think Chip believes that Alex is really good for the news. I think he thinks that she's the perfect way to deliver this. She's disarming, she's charming, there's enough integrity. So he's basically willing to take whatever abuse she is willing to dish out to him in the interest of the news. That's what he tells himself at night.
Yeah, that's
to make
correct.
himself feel better.
Yeah.
But he's also obsessed with Alex Levy, and I understand that because I am obsessed with Jennifer Aniston. I didn't plan that character arc. That wasn't like a day one thing.
Yeah.
But
Okay, don't make it weird, Chip. Go ahead.
I'm gonna get weird. And there was just something special that we started, doing together on screen, and I think that the showrunners chased it, and it got weird and interesting, and that's just everything I love. So.
Did you ever talk to producers? I'm curious because producers often are like this. They think they're the person who made the person in front of them.
Yeah.
I've had this experience. A lot of people have had this experience.
Well, here's the truth. We did have some consultants, particularly we had a really great director of live television come on. But I have gotten the comment from some producers who say, "Man, I really know this character. I've seen him." You know, I come from the world of independent film, and I have some experience producing, and I have enough ego to think that, you know what? I'm gonna bring out the best in this person. They're pretty great. But once I get my hands around it and do this thing, it's gonna be that much better.
Right.
So that is for me. The other half of it, I could not have anticipated, which is how stressful the live television component is. You know, like I'm producing a movie, we get it wrong, whatever, take two, we're good. And once I really understood that and saw that, I think that helped me a little bit to figure out the nature of Chip.
Also, the face when she fires you, you realize you're fungible, because all producers are on some level.
So I have been told on these lovely, I don't know if you know about social media, but these.
I've heard about it.
Yeah. Sometimes people are not that nice on
Yeah.
there. And I have been told that here and there that my face is punchable. Yes. But I choose to accept that.
Yeah.
In a positive light. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that last thing was very punchable. The last line you did there.
Yeah.
I wasn't really have COVID. I just
That's right.
lay on the floor. And then I'm like, you're such a loser. You're
So let me challenge you.
All right.
Let me challenge you.
Good luck.
Chip is not a loser.
Okay, all right. Tell me why. Tell me why.
Because here's what Chip knows. He knows what his assets are. He knows the bag of tricks he has to work with, right? He will always be there for Alex Levy. She is an electric being who's going to be up and down the sine cosine wave of life, and she is always going to need him in those moments. And when he says that, when he says, "I am your doormat, I'm always here," he knows that she will come back to him.
Oh.
So in some ways, he is using what he's got to position himself to be there. And I find that
It's good.
a little sad and kind of inspiring.
All right. Make a loser a winner. Okay. All right. It's kind of like Donald Trump. Oh, did I say that?
All right, I'm out of here.
All right, next one for Tig. Oh, the world is too small. Oh, that's such nonsense. I want you to talk about the chief of staff thing. You have nailed this. I know every billionaire I know has a chief of staff that is this venal. They're all like this. They all war with each other and fight with each other, but you got it cold. I have to, and you have never met one of these people, correct?
Not that I know of.
Right. You'd know.
I don't really run in those circles.
Right. Well, they are always these helpers and powerful, Chip, just so you know. Powerful. No, Mark, I'm kidding. Talk about this character. You told me backstage you're not an actor, but this is, you've nailed this. You have nailed this.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think that the closest that I've ever come to somebody like that character was an old boss of mine, and she was protecting her boss.
Yeah.
And that was just kind of what I used as inspiration.
Right.
And why are you laughing?
Hearing the way you built the character.
What's that?
I think it's funny.
She doesn't know.
This is why I don't consider myself an actor, because as soon as I speak up, Reese starts laughing. It's like I come in today going, okay, I'm gonna like do this, I'm gonna pretend like I'm like you guys, and then I hype up, and she's like, I don't even know.
Finish your excellent story while this person.
That's essentially it. And the boss that I'm talking about is Reese.
You know, I can see it. I can see it. Yeah. So you have a show, your new show just came out called Hello Again. Tell us your Reese story in it. Speaking of which,
Yeah, I do have a story about Reese.
explain your show. Explain your show.
What's that?
Explain the show. It's a stand-up show.
Yeah, it's my new stand-up special on Prime Video. And yeah, Reese and I, we had a meeting. My wife and I went in to meet with Reese and her partner, Lauren, and producing partner, everyone relax. But you and Lauren are mysteriously close. But, Reese was talking about working on Big Little Lies, and she talked about all the different, all of the different height differences in the actresses. She said, "You're 5'2". She said, "Laura Dern's 5'10", Nicole Kidman's 6 feet, and Shailene is 5'8" or something." And I have trouble hearing sometimes, and I responded saying, "Oh, that's interesting. I used to date a woman that was 6 feet tall, and I think she was insecure about her height, so she hunched." And there was an awkwardness in the room. It was, and I couldn't figure out what had happened. And then when my wife and I left the meeting, she was like, "What in the hell were you talking about?" And that's when she told me, I hadn't heard of the actress Shailene.
Right.
And what I thought she had said, what I thought Reese had said was that Nicole Kidman was 6 feet tall, but Shailene's 5'8". And we oddly never heard from Reese again. Until the morning show, of course.
Right. Yeah.
Not true.
Well, in point of fact, she does lean. But one of the things, your character isn't funny in any way on this show.
Thank
right?
you.
But it is. But she is funny at the same time. What were you?
I told you I have a hearing problem. Well, I didn't hear what you said.
Yeah. Okay. When you're doing this character, you're channeling this boss, but what are you thinking? Do you want to make a joke? Because you do it like this.
I want so desperately to make jokes because when I am doing a drama, I'm so confused because a line will be like, we got to get to the office at look, I didn't write this, but it's like, we got to get to the office at 5 o'clock. And then I'll say that, and then, Mimi will be like, all right, we got it. And I'm like, really? Okay. It's so confusing to me. It's like we're just on camera talking. And then I head home, and
God, such a
But I have to say, people were concerned that Reese would be upset about that story, and I was like, I'm not worried about her.
Yeah.
That's the best story ever.
Yeah.
But I do have a moment on the show where Jen and I are trying to get through a doorway, and I feel like that is the slightest bit where I was scared I was pushing a little too hard, but it is not in that way, but I was just like, what's that?
Chasing with
Yeah, I was scared that I was maybe acting a little too...
Aggro.
What's that?
Aggro?
No, funny.
Leaning
towards...
Go ahead.
Not to bring it back to Shailene, but leaning towards comedy, a funny bit.
Yeah.
And it was supposed to be a little bit.
Yeah, it was.
A little moment of levity.
It was supposed to be a funny moment, but I really wanted to...
But you held your own. You're being a little humble. Like you held your own. John Hamm and that was you were incredible opposite him,
you.
and that was acting.
Yes.
Period.
Thank you.
Dramatic acting, and it was incredible.
Very true.
Yes. Yeah. Another character that's very common around there's always that guy on these, now that I'm a CNN star, there's that guy. Talk a little bit about your character.
Well, I have to share a story with it. I just, found out about it on the red. We had a press, line, and we had to do an interview about the show. And the interesting thing is, my character gets almost canceled season 2 because he sort of flippantly says, that the Punxsutawney Phil is a spirit animal.
Yeah.
So I won't say her name because I don't want her to get canceled. But she dropped the mic and she goes, that because of that, we can't now say that we have a spirit animal.
Wow.
And that was just mind-blowing to me that the show would have that impact even within the industry.
Wow. Right.
So, which is, to me, is extraordinary. And the whole point of that storyline was to really highlight this nasty, insidious nature of cancel culture.
Right.
By pointing out how absurd it is that one would innocuously say that someone is a spirit animal, but the one person who criticizes him is not even Native American, but launches a campaign not simply to criticize him or demand an apology, but to destroy him. And that's what I love about the show, is that it highlights all these topics in a way where and that are very current, that we're all living under, and obviously it's even impacting in some cases, the media.
Although it's interesting about cancel culture is no one really ever gets canceled. They always just seem to come back. And often the people that talk about being woke, which is interesting,
right.
which is, of course, become a political thing.
Right.
The opposite of woke is asleep, actually. Just keep that in mind. So it's interesting. Think about it.
or is it? I don't know.
Yeah. So when you think of your character, he started off as somewhat, silly, but it becomes quite a serious character, I think.
He is. I think he's misunderstood. And I think that's what I love about playing Yanko, is this is a character who's, is a desperate romantic. He's a poet, and he's a goofball. He makes stupid jokes and he's silly and everything. But I think he's a profound guy. And he clearly has a different take, which is what I love about playing the character, than most of the other characters on the show. I mean, he's sort of an island unto himself, ideologically, politically, doesn't want to be pegged for any one party, wants to consider himself a free thinker. And that's refreshing. And in so many ways, I know a lot of the cast get approached about their characters giving voice to their opinions, and I'm constantly approached about giving voice to people who say, I don't see characters like this on screen.
Right.
And that's thanks to Carrie Aaron, to all of our producers here, and Charlotte Stout, who has taken the reins from Carrie. Carrie created the show, and Charlotte has done the impossible and taken a very distinct voice in Carrie and now made it her own, but still developed these characters within that world. And certainly that is what I love about Yanko, is that he is a free thinker.
And you, just for people to know, you're also on Shogun, which you're doing a fantastic job on.
Thank you.
It's also a big show. A little different, Shogun.
I had to sort of...
I didn't recognize you for the longest time, and someone's like, it's the morning show guy. And I was like, oh my God. Let's talk about with the producers of this. Why don't we start with you, Charlotte, about writing this and moving into these characters. I'm going to ask you about season 4, but not yet, because how do you look at the development as you move? Obviously, right now, real news is weirder than what's happening on the show, but you guys have been very prescient about COVID, about Roe, about a whole bunch of things. Talk a little bit how you get that inspiration, because you could almost not catch up with what's happening now.
Well, I think in the case of Roe, we knew the decision was going to come down. In the summer, we just didn't know there was going to be that crazy leak on May 2nd. But I think I think most people, because so many people are on social media, you put the radar out and you can pick up stuff and you can kind of tell what people are gravitating towards. So, I mean, you're always terrified, like every year you'll write a season and you'll miss it completely, right? Like, the zeitgeist bus will pass you and you'll be running after it. But I mean, all you can do is sort of really listen. And then I think the interesting thing is you're trying to pair what's happening in the world with the emotional arcs of each character. So what are the right issues to talk about that are resonant with each character? So that's kind of how we pick what topics we really lean into, if that makes
but
sense.
It's hard to be prescient like this. I mean, none of you knew when you were making this, because you were making it so long ago, that say we'd be governed by 1864 at this point, correct?
Well, the interesting...
What? Come on.
But you know what? Some people did know, and this is a crazy thing, and just a very short story. When we first started, we were talking about like if Bradley wants to do a story on something and they're going to say like, that's a little too controversial. So naturally, we went to the laws had just been passed in Texas. So we wanted to do that. So we had an amazing researcher who actually wrote the crazy episode 9, where everything just goes to hell. And she was talking to activists on the ground and doctors working down there and women doing these traveling back and forth. And so they knew before we did. So we got the information from the real people. They were like, you don't know what's happening down here. This is just the beginning. And I was very focused on a sort of the type of abortion that most people know, where you go in to see a doctor. And literally they were like, the line pills are the next front. That's was said by a doctor down there who's trying to keep a clinic open. So I think if you actually listen to the right people, people are ahead, if that makes sense.
But it's also not just that. It's the tech people, the COVID, January 6th, a lot of this stuff that now is in the news today.
I think we were honestly really worried that, sounds almost sadly, inadvertently comic, but we were worried that Jan 6 would be irrelevant.
Yeah. So maybe
that was a slight concern about that story. It was like, will anyone be even thinking about it anymore? Yes, apparently.
The wheels of justice.
Yes.
So maybe talk about this, because the news, one of the key topics is what's happening to the news business and the media business writ large, because it's sort of in a free fall, right? And this is about a free fall because the plot around the tech billionaire coming, the problems of economics and stuff. Talk a little bit about that and thinking about making a show about what is a decline. I mean, you see the ratings of cable networks and morning shows and things like that, and you base it on a real book, obviously. Talk a little bit about where that is now.
Well, it was inspired, by Brian Stelter's book, Top of the Morning. And, I think this show is very much about seeking the truth. And I think that's always been the focus of the show. And so when you look at tech and when you look at media, you listen. But sometimes, you have to listen to everything, and you have to figure out what is the truth and what is the story we want to tell. And as Charlotte said, how do we service our characters and their journeys in telling that truth? I don't know if that was the question.
No, it is, but it's also, it's about an industry. Brian's a good friend of mine, but it's an industry that's seen enormous changes, and I mean, just what's happened at CNN with all that's happened. Talk about, there's more drama there in 5 seconds than anywhere else, and it just keeps happening. Because it's about decline and decline of influence in the attempt to hold on to life in a post-fact world, right? Correct.
Yes, like it's so difficult to figure out what is the truth, what are the facts, and you have to read a lot and you have to listen, and you got to go with your gut. And I think it's fascinating watching MSNBC, CNN. I never watch Fox. I can't.
Really?
I just can't.
Yeah, you gotta watch it though.
I know, but you have to, because you have to see the lies that are being spread in our country, and how, as Jen said, how divided we are as a country.
Yeah.
And the media has a responsibility to help that divide come together.
Right, while they're being attacked at the same time.
While
We're
they're
going to
being
talk all
attacked.
of us about that in a second, but I want to finish it on everyone. It is about also consequences. There's a lot of stuff about consequences in this show, and the consequences of actions that people take. When you think about it, if you had to think about what the most important elements of a show like this is trying to do, what would you think they are?
I think the show is built around, it's kind of amazing just listening to everyone talk about how they build their characters and the decisions they make here. These are wildly competent people who love what they do, the characters on this show. And there's a lot of competency porn. You saw some of it when we did have clips. And so these are people who love deeply what they do. They care about, they do it with integrity. and they are really flawed and petty and egotistical, and they want to do the right thing, and then something gets in the way in their lives, in their interpersonal lives, and they blow it, right? And so the show has a deep respect for what they all do, and I think partially you're asking about the scene Nicole and Holland had, and part of the whole design of the show, which is there's morality in the show, but there's a sympathy to everyone's actions. And so it gives there's a humanity to it and a reality to it that I think if you're designing that scene where there's a villain you hate, then the scene is TV, right? And if it's a villain you sympathize with and understand, then it's electric and dramatic. And so, and that's what the show is always chasing, which is getting you into the reality of a moment, and also, I think, being humble about you might do the wrong thing, So and so ideally that should build some sympathy and understanding as opposed to the kind of polarization we've been talking about.
So let's talk about the moment we're in, because this is, media is right at the center of it, and media is sort of eating itself at the same time. You just had this NPR controversy. Everyone's dropping a dime on each other. The economics are out of whack. You just underwent an enormous strike, which changes everything. Reese, let's start with you talking about, you have a business, you think about producing and the changing economics of it. How do you look at where media is? Because it's almost, I had someone, and I'm not gonna say who it is, a big media executive, and he's like, content is king. And I said, actually, it's kind of a duke right now. It's becoming a duke compared to the distribution and everything else. But I do believe, and we'll get to AI at the end, but the storytelling still wins in some ways. Talk a little bit about being a media entrepreneur. You're an entrepreneur, just so you know.
Thank you. Thank you. It's nice to hear you say that. That's so nice. That's so nice.
Oh, come on, just take it.
No, I appreciate it. I do think it's the macro landscape of media is shifting rapidly. And being able to be precognitive about what audiences are doing and watching and where is a full-time, nonstop job. We are competing for eyeballs with social media constantly, YouTube, all of it. I think young people are consuming much more media on socials than they are traditional. They're not going to movie theaters anymore. My kids don't go to the movies anymore. And they also, it shifts inside of our business too, because streaming was like the biggest thing for 3 to 4 years, and there was just this never-ending, constant smash for content, and like literally you could sell anything, right? I mean, like
and
anything.
they did, but go ahead.
And now it's not. So post-strike, I mean, what I'm seeing right now, and I think from the buying and selling landscape side of it, is that probably part of the strike was a reset for these studios that are not profitable, right? And these streaming services. And it was an opportunity for them to resize, reorg, and cut costs. So we're gonna probably see less stuff, which is probably good, right? It was just chaos. You didn't know where to, it was a flea market.
We can slow down a little bit.
Yeah, we can slow down a little bit. But there's going to be more intention around it, and it's going to be a little bit harder. What I really worry and wonder about, what is the world for artists? I mean, what are careers like ours possible ever again? Are there opportunities for people to really emerge as a star? How do you know with no data transparency?
Right.
How do we even know if something did well or didn't do well?
Right.
I will say Netflix is pretty transparent about it, and will say Jennifer Aniston and Adam Sandler had the biggest movie of
How do we
year.
know?
Well, they knew. They know, and they talk about it. Right. But the other people don't, and it's tough as an actor. How do you negotiate? As a producer, how do you market? If you don't know where you sit in a landscape, how do you value something?
Right. So how do you?
Well, you depend on you depend on independent sources. So you do have some analytic companies outside that sit outside of these.
Parrot Media.
Parrot, Nielsen is trying to do more in understanding who's watching what on streaming, but it's pretty much. I mean, there's real amounts of data too. They've got a lock on it.
Right.
So.
Well, they don't want you to know. Just so
no, of course they don't want you They don't want you to have the advantage, and it's tough.
Years ago, I interviewed Michael Levitan. I had him on stage, and he was talking about Modern Family, and he had to get me to get YouTube to tell him what was happening on it. It was interesting. They wouldn't let him know how well they did or the clips did or anything else. But he understood it was about to shift. Jennifer, you of course had a show that was very different. It was sort of the broad thing. When you're thinking as a producer about the media landscape, how do you look at it? Because she's right. This is what's happening now. Like, who is this Mr. Beast? But he's very big, right? You know
My
who he
kids
is.
love him.
We know
My
who he
kids
is.
are
I don't know who
obsessed
that
with
is.
him. Yeah.
I keep my head
You
in the
need to know
sand a
Mr.
lot.
Beast.
I know there's a lot I need to know.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of ignorance is bliss for
Yeah,
me.
yeah, yeah.
Because it is almost too hard to take a deep dive looking at what's actually happening happening in the world. Because I am we did start in this industry at a time when it was
Broad.
so glamorous and so fun, and to go on auditions and just hope that you get it, and hope you get that movie of the week, and then hope you get that, that little guest star on Quantum Leap, and then, you don't even know what that means, but you know what I mean? It's like just that little excitement of just when it was so simple, and now it is becoming so, it's too much sometimes, but so I have partners that help out a lot.
Right, but then it was, 'cause
Truly,
you
actually.
didn't, now it's all data, of course.
Right.
I'd love to get an idea of all of you, what's your media diet right now? Anybody?
Diet?
Media diet, yeah. Yeah. Anybody?
I read page 6 of the New York Post online to steal stories for the show.
Really? Which one did you recently steal?
You'll see when season 4 comes
Okay.
out. There might be more than one.
Do you know I was on page 6 once? Top in the Jennifer Aniston position. I was actually in the I know, it's sad. When I was pregnant, and it was when I was pregnant. They announced my pregnancy and said, "Who's your daddy?" And they speculated whether Jeff Bezos was the father of my child. And had turkey baster references. I know, right? I know. Thank you, Rupert Murdoch, who I call Uncle Satan, but we'll not get into it. But it was really interesting. Yeah, it was. Yeah, you can't use that story, by the way. So, and that's how my right-wing mother found out about my pregnancy. I know, right? But talk about media diet. You read page 6. Anybody else? Media diet.
New York Times, LA Times, everything.
Everything. But nothing. You didn't mean digital. What about digital here? Who uses? I look at all the digital. So. Do you all?
Newsletters.
Only digital.
Yeah.
Only digital.
Smirkonish.
Who?
Smirkonish.
Smirkonish, yeah.
Yeah, he has a good newsletter that's pretty balanced.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say Wordle over here. You're like,
Wordle. By the way, did you see the New York Times has skewed more gaming than
Yes.
journalism?
Yes.
Just in the past year?
No, it didn't. It's
Just the past year?
Yes, it's making more growth from that. Yes. Yeah.
More people are looking at the gaming on New York
Yes.
Times than reading the articles.
Literally, Wordle is saving investigative journalism.
Right. Except
If you didn't play Wordle with your grandmother,
Yeah.
like the New York Times can't find out who in the government is doing something bad. That's basically where we are.
okay.
But does anybody read
Not
that
quite,
article?
but actually, I was with the CEO of the New York Times yesterday, and she thought that was misconstrued. News is staying the same, and it's actually doing fine in terms of numbers. It's just that gaming has grown.
Okay.
So has
That's a
cooking
good
and things like
clarification.
that. So, but it's interesting because one of the things that affects the things that you guys are in the show about is tech. I want one of you to take on how you look at tech as someone in the media. I'm going to pick someone in a second. Mark.
Oh, yeah, Mark Lott.
Yeah, I mean, look, for me, I am an actor on this show. I run an independent film production company with my brother. I'm constantly finding a fight for my little corner of the sandbox, and how can we keep the interesting stories alive? And as the reduction of quote-unquote content is happening, which is a word I fucking hate. I think it is the worst thing that has happened to our business.
Right. Same thing with the word user. It's only used
really
with
terrible.
drugs
It's a really terrible thing.
and
I think Reese is right. What we're experiencing a reduction right now. We're experiencing, do you want to call it a pullback? The bust or the boom. We're still making twice as much stuff as we did before the streamers came in, so we can't forget that. But I think what's going to happen right now is we're going to lose what I call the interesting middle. I think what we're going to have is these cheap things that are going to be able to sustain the business from reality television show, you know, and those are going to bring some numbers. And then we're going to go way up here. We're going to have Reaganomics again, okay?
Prestige.
And we're going to have these, you know, still going to have to pay the big prices for $80 to $100 million big IP things that still bring some people into the theaters and maintain those subscriber bases, that $15 you pay to Netflix, that $15 you pay to HBO Max. But what about the interesting middle? You know, there was a time when we had in this boom, which was not a sustainable financial model. I get that, and I don't know how that works. It's above my pay grade. But shows like Fleabag came out of that, you know, and these wonderful shows that, you know, Michaela Cole breaks out on HBO, you know, and that was because that was, you know, cost-efficient content. It was a lottery ticket that they could take a gamble on, you know. So I am trying to focus our company and as much as I can people's energy on, you know, nobody knows anything anymore about what's going to hit, and we certainly think, yeah, when we put The Rock in this thing with that formula, it's going to get some good hits and good views, you know, but Fleabag, man, like we got to keep investing in these things. So that's my stump right now.
Yeah, it is. Though at the same time, those things can find their audience, you know, in an interesting way.
Exactly. So that's my argument, you know. And I go to HBO and I go to Netflix and I'm just like, guys, you can't say for sure that the $12 million an episode show is going to work. The critics might come after you because you're so big and boisterous. They want to chop you down. Be the small thing that people want to lift up and find its way. Be that little lottery ticket, and I don't know. I mean, I don't understand the economics enough, but that's what I'm pushing for.
Yeah, I did an interesting interview with Ted Sarandos where he said exactly this about 2 years ago, that there was going to be the top, the bottom, and then the middle was going to get hollowed out, which was, I think people weren't really listening to him. Michael, can you talk about that idea of where you think about it running a media business itself?
Where what?
Running a media business itself, what do you look for?
A very successful media business.
Yeah.
Like, he started a company at a time when they were all dying, and he did. Like, it's
which is
pretty,
a good time to start a company, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm a little less pessimistic. You know, the good old days, you know, in the last few years, yes, there was an explosion. There was so much being made, and it was financially, I guess, the best of times. But I don't think experientially it was. And there's a spooky thing we experience, and I'm sure everyone in the audience experienced, which is you worked on something that you loved, that you cared tremendously about. It came out, and no one knew it came out. Forget your friends. Like in the industry, you would go to lunch and you'd mention it and be like, and people will tell you about something they made, and you're in this moment. You're like, it came out a month ago. What? You know, and it's humiliating, and you're embarrassed, and all the time. So, but in the past, you know, the gatekeeping was so severe and intense. So, yes, there's a contraction right now, but there was no Fleabag 20 years ago. Like it did not exist. Period. Full stop. So if we're entering a period of rationality, and yes, if it costs X amount of money, there should be an expectation of a lot of people watch it. If it costs less money, then maybe you have more room. I think it's okay, you know? I don't think the data is as terrible as everyone's saying. Also, people are watching. People are still talking about, like, people are engaging. So the economics of all these giant companies need to be sorted out. But, you know, there's one service in play right now that's a disaster, supposedly, that has 63 million consumers. So if we have an easier job. We're not running the distribution platforms. I actually think it's much easier and healthier to be in a moment where you get to make things you believe in, work with amazing artists, and people still, you know, if you make something good, people like it, you know? So I think also we're such navel gazers and we obsess about all the moves of the industry. I think that part of it actually is still simple. Like, it's not simple to make something good, but if you do, people watch it, things work themselves out, and we should be panicked if no one's watching, and that's not.
That's not true. They are watching. It just depends. I did an interview with Frontline recently, and my son called me during the interview, and he says, "What are you doing, Mom?" My oldest son. And I said, "I'm doing an interview with Frontline." He goes, "I love Frontline," which was a shock to me, as you know, as a parent. I was like, "Really? Frontline? Interesting." And he started describing all the shows. And then I said, and I put it on for the frontline people. I'm like, look, I've got a live 21-year-old who's listening to all these shows. And he goes, I go, so Louis, I can't believe you watch PBS. He goes, I don't watch PBS. YouTube. He watches it on YouTube, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a canard that people don't watch, especially young people. So I have a couple more questions, then 2 questions from the audience. Season 4. Charlotte, Mimi?
Yeah, I want to know too.
Inquiring minds.
So there's a lot of politics going on right now. I don't know if you know that. A lot of trials, things.
Heard about a couple of them.
And life, with the performative nature of our politicians now, the ridiculous circus act that's happening. I don't know if you just saw, there was several today. Talk a little bit about where you're going. I'm assuming you're going politically, but maybe not. There's an election coming up, by the way.
I was a little bit aware. Wasn't quite sure who was running, but
The same people. It's a rerun.
it's the same. Yeah, and that's actually something.
A show we don't like.
Good one.
Yes,
A rewrite.
yes, needs a new season.
New characters.
Change up. Yeah, and that's actually thematically a little something that we are looking at in season 4. But I think the main thing to say is, we blew everything up last year.
You did.
We just blew it as
I'm
big
not sure how you're bringing her back.
as it could go.
You would be so fired. Even today, you would be so fired.
Maybe I'm fired.
Okay, fine.
So I think we have to play the consequences of all that scattering and firing and trauma and all that. So that'll be interesting. And I think, I think it's safe to say, I don't think it's giving anything away, that the show will be out after the election. So that's very interesting when you're writing it now before the election, but it's going to air, or however you want to stream, after.
So who
I
wins?
think you can't, can't tell you, spoiler, don't want to spoil. But how do you go at it in an interesting way without being predictive? Or I think the key to the show is, to me, and why it was I started out as a fan of the show and then had this incredible privilege of coming to write for it, is you have to go at the stuff sideways. I think if you go at it straight on, it's a little I could read that on CNN. I could see that on CNN. I could read that in the Times. So it's how do you take it?
Mimi?
So she didn't answer your question.
She didn't.
Just want to point that out.
Polite at this
Telling
moment.
on you.
I don't think I can say what the next season is about because I'll get fired. And,
Really? Today?
I would say that, the last season was about, what is the truth? Maybe this season could be about who do you trust?
Oh, they like that. They liked that.
Who do you trust?
We don't know.
We don't know.
Possibly no one.
Well, I don't trust any of the characters, actually. And what you did was terrible. I'd like to know, and you're a media mogul at this point.
I am, apparently. Shocking. Yeah, we'll see how that all pans out. That's another be careful what you wish for moments, I would think.
Do you think you're a media mogul now?
Me, personally? I mean, shit, okay.
All right, I'm going to get to the 2 questions from the audience and then ask a final one myself. This question comes from Paley Center member Donna, I hope it's Rina, right? Rina, I think it is. For the producers, what advice would you have for a mature, aspiring women writers to find a community here in LA to help support each other? Are there places for mentorship that help get our stories heard and published?
Well, great question. Charlotte. Anyone? Writer?
That's Charlotte.
Good question. I think you have to just keep writing. And the key is just keep writing and writing and writing, because the more you write, the better you get. And there are a lot of venues, I knew there was a place in Santa Monica where you could go do 3 minutes. And it doesn't have to be stand-up comedy. You can just do 3 minutes of your stuff, your whatever you're doing, your play, whatever. I think there are a lot of people who they share, you can find writers groups. There's also the women in film and stuff like that. So there's, WGA has a kind of, mentorship and intern program you can, start out as. So I think you need to find your community, even if you're you volunteer at a theater, and that theater has a festival that reads new scripts, and maybe they'll just, I think it's about like finding a bunch of people who have some sympathy with what you're trying to do and to get better while you're around other people to read your stuff. I think that's the biggest thing.
Anyone
'cause
else?
It takes a while.
Thoughts, Tig? Do you have any? You just work by yourself?
Me?
Yeah, do you have any thoughts on this?
I mean, it's kind of similar. I have a friend that's, she's so funny. She's such a great writer, storyteller, and I always tell her that you can write and submit scripts and do all of that, but I do think there is a power in, and this is of course coming from somebody that's a stand-up comedian, but going and performing and sharing your story in front of a live audience. And I also think that there's just different ways in, and with this particular friend of mine, because she's so smart and funny, I told her, I was like, you need to write your story, you should go perform it, even if it's at an open mic, record it, submit it to a podcast or public radio show or something. There's just different ways to get your stories out there. And I even, I'll do a theater this big, but I'm still okay to go do an open mic and do the scrappy work to continue to develop my material. And I think that you're going to run into so many different levels of people at different levels in their career.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's also a lot more small stuff in journalism right now. The really exciting stuff is done by 1 and 2 people organizations, and they're getting very influential. I'm trying to get to staff 0 at some point in my life. All right, next question. A Paley member has asked for the cast, given the Paley Center's archives television history, are there particular shows or performers you found inspiring or influential within your own career journey? I'm going to ask the performers this. Let's start with you, Nestor.
Performers that I've found influential. Oh my God, there's so many. I mean,
You get to one. What?
one. Oh my, Marlon Brando.
Who?
Marlon Brando. I mean,
Yeah,
is
okay.
Arguably to
Okay,
me the
all right.
greatest actor.
And why? Why?
He was coming off of the whole Stanislavski method, Adler, Estelle Adler in particular, and he just leaped off the screen and was just so truthful and was doing something no one was doing before that. And for me, if you watch On the Waterfront, any of those movies, any of those performances obviously hold up. But to that other question, I did want to mention We Make Movies. It's an organization. They're small. I spoke with them. I did a panel with them, and they're extraordinary. They're sort of a grassroots movement. Any young writers, filmmakers, directors, look them up. They're in New York, they're in LA, and they bring their material there. They workshop it. They shoot it. They raise money to shoot it on a shoestring budget. When any of us started out, you had to have, Super 16 was the cheapest you could shoot anything, right? So now you can use your iPhones, literally. I'm not just trying to plug Apple here, but you literally can shoot a beautiful movie on an iPhone 15 and a gimbal. And there's almost no excuse.
Right.
So we make movies. Right?
All right, Tig. Inspiration? One person, one thing.
One person, I mean, that's not fair.
Yes, it is.
It's really not.
Okay.
Growing up, I was such a fan of Richard Pryor's, and that goes across the board, acting, stand-up, all of it. I love silliness, and my God. But he had such a nice mix of silliness and heart. And I couldn't get enough. My brother and I just devoured anything Richard Pryor.
Okay.
When my brother and I discovered John Cassavetes, that was very big for us. And it was interesting because it wasn't so much, I love those movies so much, but I could see the machinations of the process. I could see that he had something he wanted to say. He had a group of talented friends that he loved. They would band up together. They would make these things. And then it somehow rise the tide around him. And then he became an actor that people wanted to cast in other things and would siphon off some of that money to go make his own strange things on the side. And weirdly, it has laid a path for me that I didn't think was possible.
Karen?
I'm a big fan of, I'm inspired by Frances McDormand. I think she's extraordinary actor. She can toggle between theater and cinema and television. She has, to me, it feels like she has the right balance of family and work, and a creative spark that's unique and authentic to who she is. So I'm a big fan of France.
Right. Good choice. Nicole?
I have to say, mine is Whoopi Goldberg for the same reason.
Yeah.
Just like a person who's one of a kind, completely authentic to who they are, and just changed the entire terrain. Yeah.
And changes herself, too.
Yeah, yeah. And has done all the things, theater.
Yeah.
She can sing, she can dance, she can tell a joke, she can make you cry.
I just got to be on The View, and she went, "You're cool," and I'm like, "Oh."
Yeah, exactly.
She's astonishing,
Yeah.
actually. Doesn't get credit. That's a great choice.
She gave me a pair of her shoes.
Oh, wow.
Anyway.
That's another time. That's another time. All right, Jennifer.
This is like Sophie's choice. I mean, I have to marry Tyler Moore. I mean, for me personally. I grew up watching her on all of her different shows. What she did as a female in the industry at a time when it wasn't done, that wasn't really done the way it was. The turn she took dramatically in Ordinary People. Oh my God. Yeah. She's just extraordinary.
Absolutely. There's a great documentary on her.
I saw that. The one just recently, yeah.
Yeah, it's terrific. Oof. Reese?
I mean, the thing, I'm with Jen, this is so hard because there's so many people, and I was obsessed with movies as a little girl, but Holly Hunter was a big deal for me because she spoke the way I spoke. She grew up kind of close to
In
where
broadcast news.
In broadcast news is like brilliant, and raising Arizona. She's just funny. She's got the whole package. Funny and self-deprecating and, such a rascal.
Rascal, yeah.
I love her spirit.
Yeah, you're kind of a rascal.
Thanks.
So we don't have any more time. We can't get to AI, but are you all worried about it?
Yeah.
Yeah, you should be. Don't eye roll at me.
No,
All right,
AI's
go ahead.
not AI. Look, it's here to stay. So just get used to it.
Yeah.
And I think AI is not coming for your job. People who know how to use AI are coming for your job.
Correct. That is
So learn about it. Figure it out. Get ahead of it. It should be a tool upon which we layer our own creativity, our own humanity, and our own ethics. That's a whole conversation that I think would be longer.
Right. Well, we'll talk.
And I would say it's important for women and people of color and people who are othered sometimes in those developmental spaces really need to get in there because we need to have our consciousness represented in that space.
100%, because I'll tell you, it's being developed by the same people who brought you the internet.
I know.
Just so you know.
I know. So let's not be scared of it. Let's dive in. Let's lean in. That's me, though. You know how I am.
Yeah, but I agree with you.
Yeah. All right. I don't have time for more questions. I could talk to you guys. You guys did an amazing job. This is an astonishing show. We're looking forward to season 4. Thank you. Cast, everybody. And thank you. Thank you. Thank you.